Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Grid Talk Talks the Grid. Today, I'm joined with Nell and Mila, and today we are talking all things Silverstone. So, for Nell and I, this is our home Grand Prix. Are you going, first of all, Nell? Are
I'm
you
not.
going?
I wish I was, but I know you
I,
are.
well, fingers crossed. It's all ifs and buts at the moment for me to go. I have the Friday off of work, but I'm just waiting on some third party stuff to hopefully go. And even if I don't, there'll be some more content coming out because Charlie is attending Silverstone, so there'll be a lovely vlog there. And then if I go, I will also do a vlog, but we'll probably just combine it. But fingers crossed. But nevertheless, it is, I think, the only race on the calendar that's going to have full capacity of fans, which is, first of all, amazing. In case any of you have been living under a rock in the world of motorsport, it's also been Goodwood last weekend, which also had, I think, pretty much the whole capacity of fans, I think. And I don't know about you, but it just felt so normal seeing drivers taking
I
selfies
got
with.
so jealous, didn't
I
you?
know.
Seeing everyone at
Uh,
Goodwood, I couldn't
I
cope.
was just, my heart broke. There were loads of pictures of people meeting Daniel, and I was like, I think this might be the only year, like consecutively, I haven't seen him, which like breaks my heart. But I'm so happy for everybody else that could go and witness motorsport, as we all should. But this week it is Silverstone. Now, with it being British, we would have had the Euro 2020 last week. When we're filming this, we actually don't know who won the Euros yet. So, it could be some beef next week between Ferrari and McLaren, being Italian and British team could be a little bit of tension going on. Last year we actually had two races at this iconic track. So we had the British Grand Prix and then we had the 70th anniversary Grand Prix as well. And we both had two different winners. One was a little bit more eventful than the other, and I still think is quite controversial. So Lewis won the British Grand Prix on three wheels. Don't know about you, but I don't know if there is a rule in the rule book that states you have to finish on all four wheels. Kind of reminds me of like that Cars, the film Cars, where like he is just dragging it to the finish line. Obviously, hats off to Lewis for bringing the mess of that car to the finish line, first of all, and had no further damage. And then I believe Max won the 70th anniversary race, but I think we kind of forget that we had two races there last year. Like I couldn't remember. So are we excited about the whole Silverstone get up? Because I am, but if I don't go, I think I will be having some serious FOMO.
I agree. I'm going to be very jealous of everybody there, but still, as a Brit, you're always excited for your home race, and I'm still just excited. Lando Norris has got a lot to prove, and it could be good for George if he can finally get his point. So there's still, as a Brit, a lot to look forward to at my home Grand Prix, even if it is from my actual home.
As for jealousy, I'm mainly jealous that you guys have a Grand Prix. Thank you. I have to bring it up every week because it's dear to my heart.
Gotta stay relevant.
I don't know. I mean, I really love Silverstone. It's definitely on top of my favorite tracks. Really, I really, really like it. So I'm very excited. I'm excited to see the Hamilton Straight in action.
Oh yeah.
Time. That's gonna be an interesting one. I said jokingly in my live watching of the Austrian GP how funny it would be for Max to overtake Lewis on the Hamilton Straight. I'm not sure if the Brits would think that's funny, but I mean,
I find it funny. I would.
I
love
think
to
everyone
see that,
would
to be
see the
honest.
irony.
It would.
I think it would be good,
right? But yeah, I'm really happy to see like fans on track. It was so impressive in Austria already with the few people that were there, and judging from like the perspective, I'm living in a different country. To all of you who don't know, I'm from Germany. Hey, what's up? I'm not British. So for us here, the rules are still a little bit different. And judging from our perspective, my first reaction was like, are you insane? Because it's like you're letting so many people in. But then again, you guys are having a bit of an experiment going on with just trying to figure out how to get out of this flippin' pandemic. And I just really hope everyone is going to stay safe and can fully enjoy the weekend. And I think for the drivers, it's just going to be the absolute happiest they can be, because nothing beats a live audience, I would say. And definitely,
Yeah, I think they're all looking forward to having, even, from other countries, every single driver is looking forward to having a proper set of fans, the full, and a lot more support, I suppose, for all of them as well, because Austria, it was cool to see all of Max's fans, but it really was Max fans. And I don't think the Brits are very supportive of the Brits, but I think there's more generalized support for different teams. It'll be nice to see a bit of that. Not that I really didn't appreciate the Orange Army, because it was very good.
I think the interesting thing about the British Grand Prix, or like the British fans in general, is that the country is so full of motorsports history. And I think that's partly the reason why they don't only support like their own, but just a few teams and all of their drivers as well. And I think that's very special. And I think that's a bit what makes Silverstone so special, because it's just such a big part in motorsports history, and coming back to it every year, it's kind of going back to the roots a bit. And I'm really excited to see that happening, apart from the fact that I really like the track, and I'm very excited to see the action going on.
A couple of things I want not to bring to our attention, but to bring to the table to discuss. So obviously Silverstone will be the home race for a handful of teams and drivers. The one thing that I am heartbroken about is recently the Australian Grand Prix has been cancelled. So that means Daniel doesn't get a home race technically, but with McLaren, he does get a home race, but it's not exactly going to be home. So, I mean, I'm hoping someone is there with an Aussie flag if I'm not there. Yeah. I don't have an Aussie flag per se, but I do have I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's a massive like do one flag, and it's got his face in the Teletubbies sun. and
why do you have that?
No, because my brain, I can't draw and I can't do anything. So I reached out to Fern. If you don't know who Fern is, she does amazing artwork. She's amazing. And I went to her with this idea, and I said, I can't design it. I have no creative bounds like that. Basically, it's Daniel's face in the Teletubbies sun, and it's all you need is a bit of vitamin D, and then in brackets it's got AN.
Oh,
I know it's
clever.
Yeah, so it's cute. I will hopefully, if I go, take that and show my support. So I think for the British drivers and teams, it's definitely going to give them a morale boost. Not that I think morale in Formula One is low. I just think for some drivers, it's probably just going to hit a little bit harder than others. That's just something I just wanted to ask, is how do you think this is going to affect the likes of Lewis and George and Lando, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, Red Bull, technically. Who am I missing? Williams. How do you think that's going to affect the morale in those teams? And do you think it's going to give them a performance boost? Do you think that they're going to feel the pressure more because they're at their home race and it's full fans, and they're so wanting to put on a good show but also put on a race as well? Do you think some of those drivers and teams will take it too far and maybe make a mistake, or do we think that's going to only drive them to make sure that they're safe, and that it's just more about scoring points and just bringing the car home?
I think for some people the pressure is going to be higher. I'm not sure, but I think George really wants to score these points at this particular race, and I 100% get it. But I think he's not going to be one to crack under pressure. I think it's going to be something else that's going to, screw that up, because it always happens. Probably a pit stop. I'll
He
predict
just has the worst luck, doesn't he? I really want it to happen, but I am 99% sure it won't, just because something always happens to him.
Yeah.
And particularly his home race with his family there and everything. It's just, it will go wrong.
Let's just talk about how wrong it's going to go, so we're unjinxing it. Okay?
Yeah.
Going to be
Exactly.
so bad. It's not going to work at all. Bro is not going to score any kind of point. Probably DNF. Who knows? No, but
if that happens, Mila, you're going to be in so much trouble.
It's not. This is mind games, okay? Psychologically, just influencing stuff. I think, though, for some of the teams, this is just going to be a huge confidence boost in a positive way. I can't really see anyone going too far. If we consider the experience most of the drivers have. I think if some people are going to go too far, it's those who are not having their home GP, just because it's those who are driving recklessly. But I think that actually is an interesting topic, because technically Max is going to have 3 home GPs, one in Austria, one in Belgium, and then one in the Netherlands. So he's probably having a lot of confidence when it comes down to that. So I think it's just going to be an atmosphere thing, and that the vibe is going to be very, very special. I think for Lewis, especially because he has been having a hard time. He has been opening up about it as well. He's been talking about how his mental health is being affected right now. And I think for him, it's going to be just so helpful and calming and, uplifting to have people there who support him every step of the way. So I hope it's going to be only positive outcomes, as opposed to people taking it too far and overdoing stuff. I think that's more unlikely to happen, but never say never, especially in this season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of a morale boost for the teams than the individual drivers. It's lucky that Lando and George are both part of British teams as well, so they kind of get double the support. But I think the way this season's going, particularly for Lewis, it's really hard to say whether they have enough to for him to get a boost from the fans, because it's not been a particularly successful period. The beginning of the season was a bit better, but I think the morale for teams at their home GPs is unmatched. It's like Red Bull. What they did in Austria was just so cool. Like, all the stuff they planned, everything about it was amazing.
While we were quickly on the topic of George, there have been things on Twitter where people have said, I'm not sure, since Lewis has signed a 2-year deal, how that would impact George, considering now Ocon has signed a deal with Alpine. I don't know whether Lewis has decided to, not veto George, to have a push and have a challenge. Maybe he feels that Valtteri isn't pushing him as much, and with the new regs and everything coming along, maybe he feels that, the team needs something else, and maybe he needs something else as well.
Let's think about Mercedes' perspective. Let's think about Mercedes going into the future. Toto Wolff said that Lewis resigning is the biggest advantage they can have, because he is such a strong hold in this whole team. Like, he holds it together. He knows what he's doing. He's super reliable, and he's just a staple for their team. So what do you do moving forward with new regulations? You have Lewis in the team as someone who just knows what they're doing, who's very, very good at adapting to new features. What you're supposed to do is get a new, younger driver in, build him up to a point where he can be the reliable one once Lewis decides to go. And then you have George Russell being the absolute best championship competitor that you can possibly have. So for me, it would be the most logical move for them to actually go and get George Russell. What ends up happening with the Williams seat is a totally different topic, because there are lots of people on hold for that one. I think y'all know my opinion on who's supposed to get it. Let's not jump into that one right now. But like, I think, judging from Mercedes' perspective, that would be the smartest thing to do moving forward if you want to invest in the future of the team. Because you need someone who's like a staple, who is a strong force. And George could be that if they build him up to this point until Lewis leaves. Sorry for Valtteri if it happens before Silverstone or during Silverstone. That would definitely be heartbreaking for him until the end of the season. But let's look back to Sebastian Vettel last year. At the point when he knew he's not going to race for Ferrari anymore, so much pressure fell off him. Maybe it could also be a good thing in the sense of mental health if Valtteri knows that at this point, with the season being super long this year. Let's see how much he could do if he wasn't under the pressure of competing for a seat all the time, 24/7. Do I think Bottas will go to Williams? I don't. If he's out, he's out, I would say. I don't see him going to a much weaker team. That's just, that wouldn't work.
Doesn't make sense.
There is guys who do that. Kimi Räikkönen, he does that. It works for him because he's racing for fun. I don't think Valtteri would do that. But in my personal opinion, signing George Russell is the smartest thing that Mercedes could do, investing into their future. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
I agree. I think you're right. I just worry they won't do it. And I think a lot depends. Don't get me wrong, I really want them to, because I think George, truly, his performance this year, he really deserves to get it. But, and I don't think they'll announce it yet, and I could be proved very wrong, but I think they will wait until later in the season. I think it depends on whether Red Bull absolutely smash them in the Constructors' Championship and they think maybe it's safer to have, they may go to one of two ways. They could say it's safer to keep our team as it is and fight harder next year with what we have, or they may think we put George in and it may take him a long time to get there and we lose Constructors again next year, or he may come in and absolutely blow everybody out of the water, which he probably will based on his performance in Bahrain last year. But we don't know, because look at Daniel at McLaren. Sorry, Caitlin. It's taking a long time
for
him.
Why do you have to destroy her like that?
but everybody supports Daniel and really wants him to get there.
True.
And for some reason, it's just not working. And that that can happen to anybody.
That's true.
And I think Mercedes will, at some point, not yet, work out which one of the two options works. I would be very shocked if it isn't George, but also slightly not surprised if they choose Valtteri at the same time. It would be a massive shame. And if they do it, George needs to find anywhere else to go. But
yeah, seriously, don't let him sit in that Williams any much longer. It
seems like he already kind of knows it. I don't know if you saw the interview, and I think it was the second Austria race. He was being interviewed and he said something really like kind of fishy, where he was like, I will definitely have a Mercedes engine in the back of my car. And obviously that could mean either, but then just his actions over the weekend made it seem like he already knew a little bit, but maybe that's just all of us overthinking it because we really want him to have it.
So George could be going to Mercedes, as if so much is exciting. Also, the big thing that we haven't discussed yet, that I briefly want to touch on, is the sprint race, the qualifying setup. It's the first race in which Formula One and the FIA are exploring this. For anyone who has been living under a rock, basically the FIA and Formula One are experimenting on sort of copying, emulating the Formula 2 setup of not a reverse grid as such, because there could be some surprises thrown in there, but essentially my explanation of this is going to be pants, but from my understanding is, so there are two qualifying sessions in a way.
Sort of.
I would explain it. So the first qualifying session is your position for the sprint race, and then your results of the sprint race result in your starting position on the grid.
Exactly. That's how it's going to be.
So this could be exciting, because this is really, and this is where I'm going to hype my man up, because if we're talking about sprint races and overtaking, this is where my man is going to come in and just shut everyone up. He's going to whip Lando's arse. He's going to go past Lewis in the Mercedes. He's going to go, right? Okay, that's my theory. So this could be really good for someone of the likes of Daniel, Alonso. I think Charles would be sick at this. George could be really good at this as well. So we could really see a completely different grid on Sunday. However, this is Silverstone. It isn't the best track for overtaking. I think Max is just going to go. I think Perez is just going to go. I think the McLarens could be strong. But then I also think if Alpine have a similar setup to last year, they could also be very strong. I'd like to see Ocon do well this weekend, because poor little baguette boy is not having a good time, is he? But you could have someone like Giovinazzi just come in and just like qualify ninth, or this is where, do you know what I mean? So I think it's going to be exciting. Do I think it'll work in the long term with F1? Probably not. In F2, I think it works, because obviously they're all the same car, pretty much.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's the problem, is that I think George in himself would be good at it, but a Williams is going to be not very good at it, because their track record is, well, for George particularly, it's hard with Nicholas, but George goes backwards a lot because the car can't perform. And so I would be surprised if he admitted this last weekend. He said he thinks they're going to really struggle because it's just not suited to that car. But I really hope it isn't just, I have a real feeling we're going to end up with a double week, 2 races of the top 4 drivers in some order. I think, and that's not the point.
I think ultimately the fast qualifying is still going to be very crucial, because if George manages to get that car into Q3 again, or like qualify in the top 10, and then only has to go a certain amount of laps keeping that position, that could work. But that still doesn't put him in a way better position for the actual race on Sunday. So the race on Sunday is going to be the same thing, and at some point in that race, George will definitely have to fight very hard to keep his track position. And I think, the difference with Formula 1 and Formula 2 and 3 is that in Formula 3 and Formula 2, you have several sprint races and 1 feature race. And the qualifying, I don't know. I mean, it means something, but it doesn't end up meaning too much. And I think a sprint qualifying is very different from a sprint race, because a sprint race means you're going to go and you get your points. But this is ultimately a race for a track position for another race.
We have to remember as well, only the top 3 drivers on the Saturday will get points in the sprint race. So, it may bring someone up, as you say, further up the grid, and they may keep that position in the sprint race, but Sunday is still where it counts. And for a lot of them, they can make these massive leaps up the grid and finish, I don't know, P6, P5, just completely out of nowhere. Someone like Giovinazzi, we just don't know.
Yeah.
But then will that matter by Sunday? Probably not, and we'll end up with the same people.
And I think
maybe we're all wrong. Maybe it'll be great, but I doubt it.
But I still think the most crucial thing is the fact that they are not in the same cars. In Formula 2, Formula 3, the cars are pretty much exactly the same. there is no other thing that matters than racecraft and team strategies, maybe. And we don't have that in Formula One. We still have a very, very strong Mercedes engine, a very strong Mercedes in Silverstone generally. I hope and kind of expect a comeback from Mercedes here. We have a very strong Red Bull. We still have a very competitive McLaren. And I kind of feel like, that doesn't change. Those cars are still going to be the stronger cars on the grid. So I think it won't matter as much for the top spots. It's probably going to matter in the midfield, because the midfield is where the actual fight is going on these days. So if the midfield action ends up switching up some places, that could be quite interesting, but I don't think it's going to be having the effect on the top spots that people may expect from watching Formula 2 and Formula 3, where it's been like, for a long time, it's been another like a different race winner each week. I don't think this is going to happen for us.
But as in Formula 2 and Formula 3, someone can crash out in the first lap of the sprint race and they will start at the back.
That can happen.
And it can happen to anybody. It's more likely to happen to poor old Nikita Mazepin. But it could also, Max and Lewis, I'm sure at some point are going to, I'm not saying it'll be this weekend, but at some point they're going to end up hitting each other purely because they're fighting so hard. And you never know when that could happen. We've seen a lot of absolute chaos this year, and I don't think Silverstone will be any different.
I think the main thing that we take from that is, even though it's a sprint race, it's all going to be about race pace, essentially. And some cars are better, some cars are worse. So it's just going to be, how the cars are going to, and the drivers as well, put it out. So all exciting, and it's all trial run. So we will see how it goes. So on that note, how are we going to do the predictions this week? Because it's going to be quite tricky, because I would quite like to do a prediction of the race overall, and also have a prediction for the winners of the sprint race, and who is going to be your wild card appearance, if there is one, which we wouldn't normally see there. Essentially, I wouldn't know where to put them, because obviously in the first qualifying it's probably still going to be the same order, but in the sprint race it could change. So who do we think is going to be on the podium on Sunday, but who do we think is going to end up in the top 10 of the starting grid on Sunday, who we wouldn't usually see?
I would say I have a feeling Max is going to do it again. I think if Mercedes don't do it this weekend, then what we really need to take away from this point in the season, going into summer break with only one more race after this before summer break. If Mercedes, I know, crazy. If Mercedes don't win this week, then that kind of changes things, I think. But I'd say I have a feeling Max is just going to run away with it once again. I'd say I really hope the person in the top 10 that we may not expect is Esteban Ocon, just because he's just performed so under where he should have been for so many weeks, and he doesn't necessarily deserve to be there, and I'd like to see him back. And I think this is a good chance.
I think it's going to be a podium with Max on top of it, just because he's that good. But I think Lewis is going to be very competitive as well. So I would say Max in front of Lewis. And then P3, I'm kind of unsure. It could go to Checo Perez. It could also go to Lando Norris. It wouldn't surprise me at this point. And I think my wild card, even though I expect him to crash and have a really, really bad race, George Russell. But it's going to not work, because he's going to have such a bad pit stop strategy. Oh my God, it's going like he's not going to score any points. But George Russell.
I also think that Max will win, most likely. I also think Lewis will probably just have a bit more of an edge this week, considering it's his home race. And I think that will probably spur him on. In terms of P3, I also agree it could be Checo. I mean, it's for Orlando, to be honest. Or it could be Bottas. Let's say if George is signed this weekend, it could give him a kick up the bum, and he could, you know, decide to pull something out the bag. So I wouldn't rule him out completely. And in terms of my wild card, which shouldn't necessarily be a wild card, I'm not even going to say who mine is going to be because I think we'll know. But I would very much like to see him in the top 10, and I will actually burn every single piece of merch I own if he's not in that top 10.
That is a very brave thing to say.
And that's also
no, I won't do it.
Huge fire. Like that's going to be a huge pile of
I could never
stuff.
burn it. I've spent too much money on it. It would have I could never do that to myself. Couldn't do that to my ego. All comfy. No, I will be very heartbroken if he's not in the top 10. But I mean, he seems to be getting points at the end of the day. So, you know, points are what matters. So, but I would very much like to see him do well this weekend. I don't think I can actually take another bad weekend. I don't think I can do it, but I think hopefully it'll be exciting. You never know, it could rain. I think the forecast is meant to be sunny throughout the week, so fingers crossed, but you never know. We do just chuck a bit of rain out just for fun. But that is it for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and comment your predictions for Silverstone this week. Follow us on all of our social media. Our link is in the description. We tweet a load of good stuff. There's TikTok, there's Instagram, you know, Twitter, all the good things. So make sure you check those out below. Also make sure you subscribe and you put the little notification bell on so you get like a notification every time we post. We post as much as we can, a variety of content, and we hope you have a lovely week. And if you are one of the lucky ones that are going to Silverstone, please enjoy it, please stay safe, and have a wonderful rest of the week or weekend whenever you're watching. Bye everyone.